All right, happening now in Langley, BC. Premier David Eby is speaking. Let's listen in.
Community cultural celebration never should have happened. And so I've asked former police chief Bob Rich to, on behalf of the province, get to the bottom of what happened here. We will ensure that Mr. Rich has access to all of the documents and individuals that he needs access to in order to be able to share details with British Columbians about how it could possibly be that this man was released into our communities without warning, unaccompanied, able to attend a major event and attack innocent people. I have great confidence in Mr. Rich's ability to get the answers that I need, that British Columbians need, and that the families and these individuals deserve. He will be working with us right away on the terms of reference of his work, which we will release as quickly as we can. And our staff are already working on ensuring he has all the authorities he needs to be able to dig into this. Thanks very much. Happy to take questions now, Jimmy.
With media will have the opportunity to ask one question, one follow-up. Please unmute your phones. You will not be heard until you are called upon. Going first is Richard Sussman from Global News. Richard, your line's open.
And based on your comments,
sorry, Richard, I just picked you up at the word "and." You start from the beginning again, please.
Yeah, of course. Based on the question or the issue that you just raised, I know that you've seen this report, but the BC Review Board's report has now been made public. Two issues on that. I want to ask whether you're concerned that this report was only made public due to leaks and there wasn't an active move by the BC Review Board to inform the public in terms of the conditions of which Blair Donnelly was released. And in those details in the report, how concerned are you that somebody that has such a substantial record and there was advice not to release him was actually released?
So I had the opportunity to read the decision of the BC Review Board, which when I read it, seems to clearly conclude that this man was a significant risk, shouldn't be released. And yet somehow between that decision and the events in Chinatown, this individual was in fact released into our community. And that is exactly what I want Mr. Rich to dig into. How is that possible? And I have lots of broader questions that are coming up about the process and the system. But at the end of the day, the core question of how a violent, psychotic individual was released into community to attack innocent people is the question that needs to be answered. And the secondary question of, are there other individuals in this circumstance that are also on day passes? Which is a very disturbing question to ask, but a necessary one to ask given that the unthinkable happened in this case already. So I'm very confident that Mr. Rich will be able to dig into this and get us the answers we need as quickly as he can.
Richard, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just on that, any concern that the BC Review Board was not more forthcoming with the information, that it had to be leaked out in order for the public to see it? And on another issue, your government announcing today that the federal government has agreed to amend the rules around decriminalization to ban the use of drugs in parks. What took so long in this regard, considering there's been pressure for months and months and months on you? And do you believe this is enough to deal with the worries that people have about the safety in their local parks?
Thanks. I think that as part of Mr. Rich's work, we'll have an opportunity to look at why the public didn't have better information about this particular case. I think that the information, the decision, any orders should have been readily available. The fact that they weren't is certainly troubling, but it is, to be honest, it pales in comparison to how disturbed I am that this man was released and unaccompanied and in our community. On your second and important question was the end of the legislative session, and we're just about to go back into the legislature. There were a number of local governments that came forward that raised concerns about what they were seeing in their community in terms of the public consumption of drugs. And one of the commitments that I made at that time on the record was that we would work with local governments to address this issue, and we would address it comprehensively. I can advise certainly that at that time we were in direct contact with chiefs of police, with Health Canada, and with local governments to get the amendments that were announced today rolling. It's been a process with the federal government to get to this announcement today, but we're here, and I want to thank Health Canada for taking this necessary action. And I want to recognize that it's not the full response that local governments and individuals and people in the community are looking for. At the same time as we were doing the Health Canada work, we've also been developing provincial legislation, a new law that we will be introducing in this upcoming legislative session that will add on and build on the announcement that Health Canada made today to ensure that there's comprehensive coverage of the areas that we know. We don't want people using hard drugs. And we will take the steps necessary to ensure that communities are safe. And at the same time, recognize the critical importance of why this work was done in the first place. Is to make sure that if you're struggling with an addiction, if you have a family member who has a secret addiction, and we know that there are people struggling and they're not telling their families, they're not telling their friends, that if you come forward, you're not going to get arrested. That you can come forward, you can talk to people, and we can help you get assistance with your addiction. That's the whole point of this thing. And we're going to make sure that people have an opportunity to get treatment and high quality treatment as we open beds across the province. And also that people can come forward without fear of arrest. We got to make sure that we're balancing these two things: safe, livable communities, and ensuring that people struggling with addiction come forward and can have their mental health issue that they're struggling with not be treated as a criminal issue.
Thanks very much. Next, we have Katie DeRosa, Vancouver Sun. Katie, your line's open.
Hi, Premier. In terms of the scope of Bob Rich's review, will he just be looking into this decision, or is there are calls from some advocates to look into the larger structure of the review board, which advocates of victims have said is opaque and not transparent. So, and some have said that they brought this up to you when you were AG. So what is the scope to actually look at the review board as a whole?
Well, there's so many challenges in the criminal justice system as a whole. We've been working with the federal government, for example, on bail reform, the issue of people with long and repeated records of committing crimes in community, committing crimes again, and then when they're arrested, being released back into the community instead of waiting in jail to interrupt that cycle of offending. And we've made good traction on that issue. The federal government has committed to us, and we're going to reinforce when we go in September that they're going to introduce that legislation in the upcoming session and get it passed, which is critically important. We have a chronic offender program with 200 people that are involved in this lifestyle of repeat offending, maybe informed by mental health or addiction issues that they're dealing with. 200 people that are now enrolled in this program under monitoring by police, the prosecution service, and the courts to make sure that we're interrupting that cycle. And I'm sure that the issues with the review board in terms of how they treat victims' families is one where we can make improvements as well. For example, when I was Attorney General, one of the things with the review board was that families couldn't hear what was happening in the review tribunal room. The sound system didn't work. So there were basic things like that that we fixed to make sure that families could hear what was going on to ensure that accountability for the review tribunal. I have to tell you, in all of that time, I never fathomed that the review board decisions that were being made in front of families, including in this case, where someone was found to be a risk to the public, would somehow result in the person that had been subject to that hearing, had been subject to those findings, still being released into the community. That is a very significant and profound and concerning issue. So that is number one on Mr. Rich's to-do list. How is it possible when a review board says this guy's dangerous, he shouldn't be released, that then he gets released and attacks people? Because that, I think, is the number one question British Columbians have. That's the number one question that I have. And I look forward to being able to move on to the second stage of making the review board more accountable generally, given the fact that, that things are obviously much worse than they appeared.